Catch your profile.
Okay. I'll hold on a second. Let me close the door.
Oh, they're gonna get. Yeah, this would be a very fast half hour, but.
Yeah. And when did you get the job of being interviewer?
Jesus, it's got to be about a good year now, I think. I've been doing it. I
Yeah.
volunteered originally.
You volunteered to
yeah.
do it? And
Yeah.
You got it.
So
Yeah, is this the same thing that Bobby Gale was doing?
it's the same idea. He did interviews, but he didn't do the Veterans History Project. It's a different set of people,
yeah.
you know. This federal government.
We're rolling whenever you guys are ready.
You all set, Dick?
I'm all set, yeah.
Okay. Hello, I'm Bob McCormack, and welcome to another episode of Veterans History Project here on Brockton Community Access. Today we're interviewing Mr. Richard Wainwright, well known to people in Brockton. Hello, Dick.
How are you today, sir?
Good, how are you?
Can't complain.
Welcome to the
Thank you.
program. When were you born, Dick?
I was born in 1932.
32. Here in Brockton?
Here in Brockton, yeah.
Lived in Brockton?
Lived in Brockton, went to the Ellis Brett School, and then what was the B.B. Russell Junior High School, and then Brockton High School, the old A building and the B building downtown.
Downtown, before they went over onto the west side?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then did you get drafted or did you enlist?
No, I enlisted. I was at Yale, and in the middle of my sophomore year, I decided I wanted to join the Army. So I enlisted in March of 1952.
March of 52, which meant that the Korean War was on at that
Was
point.
on, and that was about the middle of the Korean War.
Middle.
Yeah.
When did that start, the Korean War?
Started on June 25th, 1950.
1950. So it was right in the middle. Where did you take your basic training?
I took my basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, in armor.
Armor. Did you put in for armor or they just put you there?
I don't really remember. I put down somewhere that I wanted, that's what I wanted, and that's what I got. But
Right.
we started off at Fort Devens, and a group of us just got on the train one day, and the next thing we knew, we're in Fort Knox and for 16 weeks.
16 weeks.
And when we came out, we were supposed to know everything you needed to know about a tank.
Right, oh. Well, 16 weeks is pretty good training.
Yeah,
So
no, it was a good solid education.
And then what happened after that?
Well, eventually I finally got orders in September of 52 to go to Korea and to get a few weeks leave, and then I guess a couple of weeks leave, and then I ended up in sometime after Thanksgiving on a troop ship. That's not a really pleasant way to go across the Pacific Ocean, but
No. How long did that take it?
it took at least 11, 12 days, probably 13.
Yeah, that's a long time on the high seas.
Yeah.
Probably kind of crowded in the troop ship.
Oh yeah, there was one thing about usually you like the lower bunk,
Yeah,
but not on a cruise ship. Not on a crew.
Yeah.
Not on an Army troop ship, I should
Yeah.
say,
right.
because if you're on the bottom bunk, everybody throws up on you.
Oh, is that
So
right?
You want to be on the top bunk
So you're throwing up.
on everybody
Duh.
else, yeah. And that's and there was a
Jeez.
lot.
That actually happens, huh?
Oh yeah, it's not a.
Jeez.
Most guys that join the Army have never seen the ocean,
Right. And
and I don't have any idea what the rolling waves can do to you if you're not used to it.
especially constant,
Yeah.
day and night for many, many days.
And back and forth.
Back and
and
forth.
It's not a pleasant.
That's for darn sure.
A lot of guys just never. They stay asleep on the deck.
Is that right? Fresh air probably helped them a
Fresh
little.
air. Try to keep them from. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't.
At least if you had to throw up, up on deck, you could go over the rail
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like
Well,
that.
you had to stay away from the rail too much because if you went over, nobody would know it, and
I would think so.
end of story.
And it's pitching
Yeah.
so that you could possibly go over.
Oh yeah.
So then you get over to that land, took you right to Korea?
Yeah, it took us to Sasebo, Japan, and they processed. You go through processing, which in the Army you spend an awful lot of time getting processed.
Yeah.
And so after less than a week, we got on a troop ship again and sailed across the narrow distance between Japan and Busan. They call it Busan now, but in those days it was Busan.
Yeah.
And that was when I first realized it was cold.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, this was getting into like December at this point.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
this is, by this time it's early December. And I'm standing on deck waiting for orders to file down and go wherever you're going. And everybody's standing on deck in formation.
Yeah.
And it's, well below freezing and the wind is really howling and you're just standing there.
Wow.
Waiting for somebody to tell you what they're doing, and you're wondering whether this is they're just punishing you to get you to know what it's going to be like.
Yeah, getting you hardened
Yeah,
up for
getting you
what's,
hardened to it early on.
what's coming up.
Yeah. So, we got off and were in formation by there's a railroad station right there in Busan, and we're in line and each group gets into a different troop car. And it was just like a cattle car. You just cram them in as many as you can.
It's just a freight car?
Well, no,
Train?
it was a
regular.
regular, what was left of a regular. I mean, everything was kind of beat up by then. There was no fancy, passenger cars. They were all been abused to death, and but at least there was something to sit down on.
Yeah.
And so the last thing before we pull out of the station, in early morning, and the officer in charge said, each one of you has sea rations for 24 hours. It's going to take you at least 24 hours to get to Yeongdong-po, which was the railhead outside of Seoul. And he said, this is your rations. Don't give it away. Take care of it. It's all you're going to have to eat for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And everybody said, yeah, okay, go. And eventually the train would pull out, but it's not like it's like Amtrak today. It stops every time something happens. There's always something happening.
Right. Sure.
But we weren't out. The first stop with some roadside for something of maybe an ammunition train was coming the other way or just pulled over temporarily. As soon as the train stopped, and we're talking about temperatures that are, hovering around 0,
Right.
5, 10 degrees. These little kids, 2, 3, 4 years old, come out from nowhere in bare feet.
Bare feet.
Bare feet, no shorts on.
Yeah.
Shorts and a T-shirt.
Jeez.
No shoes, no stockings, no gloves. Hey, GI, give me food, GI, food.
Right.
Yeah, chop,
Yeah.
And this is all you got. So eventually some guys say, here's the crackers. They start throwing the crackers out. Then
Right.
this.
Yeah.
And some of them are saying, I'll give you nothing, right?
Yeah.
And you get to the next stop, another 4 or 5 hours later. No matter where you stop, they come from everywhere.
Kids. Oh.
Begging, please, GI, please give me food, GI.
Yeah.
And if you go look in your sea ration, you got, ham and lima beans. I hate ham and lima beans, right? Hey, so you throw them your main meat course, right? Ham and lima beans. Everybody hated it, but
Yeah.
if you were unlucky enough to get that,
Right.
you didn't mind throwing that away.
Yeah.
Anyway, this would go on every stop. And it had to be a half a dozen times the train stopped in that 24-hour period. Even if it stopped in the middle of the night,
Still there.
they'd show up
Wow.
until you get to the last stop.
24 hours after
24
you
hours
got on
later,
the
you
train.
pull into Yongdong-Po, okay? And you haven't had anything to eat, some of these guys, for 24 hours. They're hungry, right?
Yeah.
They've given away half their food, if not all of it. And who do you think is waiting for them in Yongdong-Po?
Who?
Little kids with
Poor
no
kids.
shoes on and no socks.
Snapers.
Only they're not begging for food. They're saying, "Hey, GI, you want to buy food, GI? You want to buy food? How much you pay me, GI?
gotta
How
be
much you speaking?" Right?
Are you kidding me? They're selling them
They're
back to
selling
sea
back to you the
rations.
same stuff you gave to them. They know you're hungry, and that's why that's why South Korea today is one of the great industrial, commercial, laissez-faire, economic, capitalist nations in the whole world.
That's unbelievable.
They,
Because you wouldn't know. You would just arrive there, and you wouldn't know what the game was.
we would. You didn't know
You're
what
giving the
game
food
was.
away, and then you're buying it back.
Buying it back.
They score twice.
That was my first experience with the Korean people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then, did you get into a regular outfit then? When
Oh, yeah, you
got
would-
to the.
At the railhead, Yongdong-Po is the railhead, then there was somebody there with a notebook or a roster saying, yell off your name or you go over there. Yell off another name, you go there.
Yeah.
And I was assigned to Company C of the 72nd Tank Battalion, 2nd Infantry Division. The 2nd Infantry Division had been there in Korea from the very beginning. It was the division which had some men stationed there after World War II. And actually, after the war started in 1950, they were joined by the 27th, the 25th, the 7th Division, 3rd Division. And then when it was all over, everybody left except the 2nd Division. The 2nd Division is still there. It's the only division
Still there today?
still there today,
Wow.
and still manning the same territory that
that
I
right?
did 50 years
Is
ago.
that right?
Yeah.
So you were in a tank, right?
Right. I started off as a driver, and ended up as a gunner.
Yeah.
As people rotated, you'd change position. But I started out. I spent about a few months as a driver, and then
And so you went into combat almost immediately?
yeah, it's not combat the way you see in the movies. In other words, we were here and they were there. And my first assignment was up on overlooking 2 Chinese hills. By the way, by the time I got there in 52, the Chinese were running the show. It was no longer the Koreans were just there participating in a Chinese war.
Right.
Up until in the beginning, it was a Korean war.
Right.
It was prompted by the North Korean leader at the time, whose name I do not recall, but it was sanctioned by both Mao Zedong and especially Joseph Stalin. They were the ones that go ahead, do it. Let's test them out.
Right.
And the Korean War was basically a test by the Communist International to determine how much will the free world had.
Right.
And so it was a test. And
So you were here, the Chinese were over here.
Yeah.
So were you trying to push them back all the time?
No, not when
Engaged?
we were. That part came actually mostly at the end, in the last 6 months. The last 3 months really was the worst, where the negotiating table was there and Panmunjom, and both sides are arguing over a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but nobody wanted to lose face, so you had to maintain the illusion that you were in this till the bitter end.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that the other side could do would convince you to stop.
Yeah.
And both sides had the same attitude, so therefore, if there was a hill that was right there in the middle of nowhere, one side would say, okay, let's take that hill. And at a sacrifice of dozens and dozens of lives on each side, on a given night, one side would take the hill. And there's no cover on the hill or anything. If you take it, you have to dig a hole in it, and you're subject to artillery fire, and you're not going to live very long anyway.
Was there any strategic purpose?
No. Well,
The hill?
there was no tactical purpose.
Yeah.
It served no useful purpose tactically. Strategically, the idea was you have to show strength. And if it's in a stupid way, it's in a stupid way. So all along the line, there'd be orders to, and of course, at the end, it was it was really tragic because it was stupid. But up until the final, when the DMZ was pretty much established, and like I say, I can only go by my assignments. And my first assignment was on top of a hill, looking down at the Imjin River, and then on the other side was the Chinese hills, two hills called Big Nori and Little Nori, Nori. They had a number too. One was 264, and the other was whatever, I can't remember. But we were just supposed to keep an eye on them, and every time anything moved, blast away at it.
Is that right? So.
And we had air superiority, so they were at that point in the war, by the end, the last year or so, they had no direct fire weapons that they exposed during the daytime.
Yeah.
So they're just 155s, 105s, 155s, and places where they were close to 82 millimeter mortars. That's an interesting, I said 82 millimeter mortars. It's just how the maybe it's not politically correct to say the Oriental mind, but it's the Oriental mind par excellence. The United States TO&E equipment was an 81 millimeter mortar. And that was the standard in the United States Army. So when the communists were rearming that part of the world, what do they come up with for a mortar? They come up with an 82 millimeter mortar.
One a little better.
No, not a little better, a little bigger.
Bigger.
You know, a mortar is a tube, essentially, 82 millimeters in diameter,
Yeah.
which means that if you want it to be really accurate, you want the round that's going in to be 82 millimeters.
Yes.
Right. However, if it's 81 millimeters, it's pretty good. It won't be as accurate where it lands.
Yeah.
But at least with an 81 millimeter shell, you can fire it out of an 82 millimeter mortar.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you've got an 81 millimeter mortar and you capture all this enemy ammunition, there's nothing you can do with it because an 82 millimeter mortar shell will not fit in an 81 millimeter mortar.
So is that why they made it 82
That's why
millimeter?
they made it 82.
It's pretty
They
good.
did that, and right after World War II, the communists armed every communist outfit in the world had 82 millimeter mortars, And of course, we had the contracts for 81, so we never bothered making 83. We just kept on making 81 millimeter mortars forever.
we had
We
to
still do.
Have to keep using our own shells and can use
Yeah,
theirs.
you couldn't use their shells, but if they captured any of yours, they could throw them right back.
They could, geez, that's something.
So anyway, so we were, and there were, you know, it was not. I mean, war is hell, and the people got killed around me, and I never got hit. Came close a few times.
Yeah, these artillery shells?
Artillery shells, because
Yeah.
you could never tell when they were coming in. They would not. It was random, totally random. The way the way the Chinese fought.
Yeah.
They figured they could do more damage with random firing as long as they landed somewhere near where. So nobody would expect it. So
Yeah.
that was the idea.
So
for
these
them.
were from artillery positions on the other side of the river,
Yeah,
on the hill.
on the other
hills.
side. Other side, even behind the hills. They, you know, with artillery, you can zero it in. And,
Send them for miles, right?
yeah.
And,
So, but one day an order came down when things were quiet, and the order came down. Every tank will fire 7 rounds of ammunition every day just to stay in shape, right?
Yeah.
I don't care, but just fire 7 rounds or something, right? Now, we had nothing to shoot at sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But there's one day we looked out, and on the Chinese mountain, and these mountains are denuded. There's not a tree left standing. There's nothing. There's not green. If you go over there today, as I had, the mountains are all green again.
Yeah.
But 50 years ago, they had been along that DMZ. They were bare, with just pieces of sticks. We wake up one morning out there. Somebody has piled up neatly rocks and sticks, and they made it look like something, right?
Yeah. A structure of some kind.
Structure of some kind. That's a bunker. So, woo, that's great. We got something to shoot. We blast it away. Now, we report back, and if you go to the records at that time and go through all the archives, you'll find that day we reported we destroyed a bunker.
Ah, that was
And
good.
they reported to their upper echelon that they had made us waste 7 rounds of ammunition.
Is that right?
And
So
then
it was
the next morning, they gathered up everything that we'd blown to bits, and they'd put it back in another pile again.
No kidding. So they were using up your ammunition.
They thought they were making us waste ammunition
Right
and getting
on.
credit for it, getting brownie points. You
Yeah.
know? And we were, we were obliged to shoot at something, and they were giving us a target. So,
Crazy war.
Oh, that's what war is. It's crazy, crazy, crazy.
So were you in that one position for
Only
several months?
No, well, for about 3 months.
3 months.
And
then,
in March, late March, early April, we moved over toward the center. That was one on the west of the Chowan Valley. We moved over to the center of the Chowan Valley, Kumwa, a town of Kumwa, and here we were in this huge open valley, rice paddies.
Yeah.
Instead of being right here, and you could look across. I mean, the first time, the Chinese had dug tunnels, and they along the ridge line. They had a trench. They had trenches that ran along the ridge lines of all of the hills. And what we used to try to do was to just fire around and hit just the very top of the ridge line to blow it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd go over and nothing would happen if you could land 3 miles inland somewhere.
yeah.
And sometimes it'd be too low. But you like to target to try to hit, and when you hit just right and it blow up the whole top of that mountain,
Yeah.
about 5-10 minutes later, you get the binoculars out and you're looking and you see 2 hands and a shovel coming up, and you see
They're
they were
shoveling
shoveling out. We'd filled in whatever they had there,
Okay.
and because they would by hand, they were they had no bulldozers or anything else.
Yeah.
So you'd see, you look out, and then for sport you'd try to hit the hands, but
Yeah.
you never did.
With shells or with,
Yeah, with
small
shells.
arms?
No, with no small arms. Too far away for small arms. We'd just take an extra shot and see if we could hit that guy while he's
Yeah.
she
Very
would
seldom.
time it so when his hands go, we'd get him. But
So very seldom you were
yeah,
able
never,
to do
we
that.
never hit anybody.
Yeah.
like that. But
Well, was that at the first position
that was
where,
at the
and
first
where the
position.
hills were?
Yeah, where the hills were reasonably. I guess the pictures are showing that they. Well, it would be like trying to have a comparison. If you were somewhere along Route 128 and you're looking over, there's the Blue Hill up there, right?
Yeah.
It would be like, you know, where Route 24 meets 128.
Yeah.
And as you come down on 128, you can imagine if 128 would be the river,
Yeah.
and there would be the Blue Hill would be up there. And these guys were up on the top of the Blue Hill, and you were over there on the top of another hill.
Yeah.
And
Pretty good
Route
distance.
128 would be the Imjin River. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you couldn't recognize anybody's face, but you could recognize the fact that somebody was there and
People moving.
people moving. You see movement.
Yeah.
Then in that April, in the middle, in the spring, we went over to this other place on one side of this huge valley. Here now we're talking about, you couldn't see anybody, it was so far away. But it's a huge rice paddy, agricultural land, not in one paddy, but agricultural land that probably went for 2-3 miles at least. So you got 3 miles of open space between the hills over there
Yeah.
and where you are. At this point, we're giving basically just artillery support for. We bring the tanks up whenever there's something was going on. The Koreans or the Marines or anybody else is attacking one of those hills over there just for show. Really, is all it was. And we'd give support. We'd be firing rounds up and over the hills to land down behind wherever the Chinese were gathering. Well, we just guessed where they would be. The road, we know where the road was, and you look at the coordinates. Say, all right, probably over there, you know. And
Right.
blast away.
Yeah.
And I remember this, again, humorous side of things.
Yeah.
Your officers some were not the best. Some were really gung-ho. And I remember this on this one occasion. We just got the first lieutenant, his name was, I think his name was Ripke. And he pretty much stayed away from, he was the platoon leader, but he didn't interfere with any. The guys that had been there longer than he had, a lot of them were Second World War vets.
Yeah.
And they knew more about tanks than he did, and he knew that. So he didn't. But then and we moved to the second position. The new officer that came in, his name was King. He was a new second lieutenant, OCS from La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And he came in gung-ho, and he knew all the rules, and he knew everything about it. He wanted action, and he, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the first orders we had after he got there was we were going to give supporting fire to the North Koreans. I mean, the South Koreans were going to take this hill.
Yeah.
And we would bring the tanks up on the line at 9 o'clock at night, and then open fire with whatever coordinates we were given.
Right.
And if you may not be familiar with a tank weapon, but these were 76 millimeter, and they had a muzzle brake on them, so that whenever they were fired, as the shells projected out, the flame and fire shoot out to the sides. It's huge, like a dragon
Yeah.
breathing on you, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're up there, and we're firing away, you know. We got 5 tanks, and they're going 7 or 8 times a minute. Each tank is letting go, is loading, unload, fire again.
Yeah.
And sergeant on the tank next to me takes out lights a cigarette, right? And this second lieutenant, brand new, yells at him, says, "Put out that cigarette, you'll give away our position."
Yeah. And this is with all the
With
belching
all
of
the
the
belching
flames.
flames going out all over the
Cigarette.
place. One guy like smoking a cigarette.
Jeez.
But he read that in the books. He was taught that.
Yes,
Or he saw it in a World
Right.
War I movie or something.
that must have drawn a few snickers from the
More than the
battle
Snickers.
hardened
Yeah.
troops there.
Yeah. But-
So then you were rotated back before the war ended then, Dick?
No. I was there. I stayed there until September.
September of 53.
53. The war technically it ended on July 27th of 53. So it lasted essentially 3 years
Yeah.
in 1 month.
And then they continued to negotiate, didn't they, after that, or did they? Had
Well,
they
oh
worked
yeah,
out a-
they continued to negotiate at Panmunjom. I've been there. It's an interesting place to go to today.
So you've been back there
I've been back there several times.
several
yeah.
times to Korea.
And but they built the peace building. I mean, where the table was negotiating the peace.
Right.
They put that right on the 38th parallel.
They did.
Yeah, and right so that, I mean, not approximately, literally, so that North Korea and South Korea each own half of the building.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they each take turns owning the whole room. In other words, even though there's no negotiating going on,
Yeah.
every 4 hours, the Koreans lock the door on their side,
Yeah.
the South Koreans, and then the North Koreans unlock the door on their side, and they unlock the North Korean door, they lock it on the South Korean, and the North Koreans do it. They stand there and guard the room, right? And then when the time is
That's
up,
something.
they leave. This has been going on 24 hours a day for 50 years.
No kidding. It's still going on
Still
like
going
that.
on today.
And then when they used to negotiate with the table, so North Koreans would be on their side,
Yeah.
South Koreans and et cetera would be on their side. Crazy.
It's
And they still haven't really,
no, the still war's still on. I mean, all it
The
was, they just declared a truce.
right.
Of course, they never declared a war. So
And then they never declared a truce, so it was
So I mean,
kind of-
they just a cessation of hostilities.
yes.
Something like over there today in Hezbollah and Israel, there was no official war. Nobody declared war on anybody.
Right.
They
Same
just started
idea.
one side started, and the other side said, "Oh, I know you don't," and then they back and forth, and eventually they called a ceasefire.
So then you were rotated back. You had the points.
Yeah, in those days you had to
Inactive.
have 36 points, and you got 4 points for every month online in the combat area, and 3 months, 3 points for your time
Behind the
spent
lines.
back in a base camp or something. So, but I was online for 4 months, so I got. I'm sorry, I was online for 9 months, so I got 4 points for each of those 9 months. So 36. So by September, I had put in my 9 months, got my 36 points, so I came back home.
So you were all set. So when you came back home, did you have to come back by ship, or did you?
Oh yeah,
They fly
oh, yeah,
it.
everything was.
Everything by ship
In those days, it was all. No.
Back on the ship. I
Yeah,
hope you
so-
got the upper.
Yeah, I made
bunk.
sure I knew my way. I knew.
You were a veteran at that
I was a
point,
veteran
right?
Coming back, yeah. So I got my upper bunk.
And then when you got back, did you?
Oh, actually, when I got back, I was sent to Fort Devens, and it was interesting because they had new tanks at Fort Devens, the new M46s. We had the M4A3E8, the Easy 8, the Sherman tank from World War II.
Yeah.
There were 46s, 47s, 48. They had newer tanks over in Korea, but the 72nd Tank Battalion was stuck with the old Shermans.
Right.
The ones that operated with like a bulldozer, with
Yeah.
each tread had its own lever.
Yeah.
And so, when I got back, these new, I think it was the 48 that was just come off the line. And this was a hydromatic shift. And it was a steering wheel instead of the steering wheel was about the size of these kids have for their, the
Is that
games they
right?
play, the
Big
video
tank.
games. Big tank, a little
Little
tiny
steering.
steering wheel, and automatic shift, no clutch, and all kinds of new ideas on these new tanks. But when we were over there, we had no air conditioning. Oh, it had air conditioning too.
Air conditioning. Wow, that was the latest word,
That was the
wasn't it?
latest word, but we didn't have anything like that.
So then you came back to Brockton. You had a career here as a lawyer, right?
Right.
Attorney.
And then minor political career.
Minor political career as the mayor of Brockton.
Yeah, that was 30 years ago.
How many years were you mayor?
Just mayor for 2 years. That
2
was
years at the time.
let's see. That was after I got back. Went to school. I got out of law school in '63, and then ran for mayor in '71. So that was, like I said, that's the last 35 years ago now. It doesn't seem like it, but
Time flies. I can remember it very well.
yeah.
But believe it or not, our 30 minutes is up.
Well,
I want to thank you for being here.
I'm glad I had a chance to give a little different side of how things really were.
Exactly. And you probably have a lot more story to tell, but
Yeah, but I didn't, I'm sure a lot of other people have talked about who got killed and how bad it was. And I'm not suggesting it wasn't, but I'm just suggesting, I just wanted to give the other side of it because I was fortunate enough not to have any injuries and fortunate enough that only one of the guys I went through basic training with and over there with the 72nd tank, only one guy got killed. So
one guy got killed from your
out
basic
of that,
training
out of the
group.
group I went through basic training with, so.
Thank God. And most of them didn't even get wounded, I imagine, huh? Which
No,
was good.
well, there was see when you're throwing in shrapnel, it'll get you. You had flak jackets on. We had flak jackets that were very effective for that day and age.
That's good.
But when mortar rounds are coming in and
Artillery.
things get you get nicked here and there.
Exactly. Yes.
Well,
Well,
got one time for 130, 1 second more.
yeah.
There's one other story. I always remember who won the Kentucky Derby in 1953. His name was Dark Star.
Dark Star,
Dark
yeah.
Star was the name of the horse because I was standing in the doorway of the bunker we lived in, reading the Stars and Stripes,
Yeah.
and they were talking Stars and Stripes, reciting that this is in May, that the 53, the Dark Star won the Kentucky Derby. And as I'm standing there with a cup of coffee in one hand and a newspaper in the other, a round comes in, whistling from out of nowhere and lands right on top of my head, on top of the bunker. Now, there's 3 feet of sandbags between my head and the round.
Wow.
But it hit, if it was 8 inches more this way, it would have landed at my feet and killed me.
Good Lord, Dick.
And
It's unbelievable.
all it did was drop sand in my cup of coffee. I had to get another cup of coffee. But that's
Son of a gun, you ruined the coffee.
yeah. But those were it's
that
all.
way.
Hey, if your number's going to come up, it's going to come up, and if it's not, it's not.
It's unbelievably the luck of the draw.
It is. It's the luck
I mean,
of
if
the
that was a couple of feet,
Yeah, could have been messy.
thank God. Well, thank you very much,
Again,
Richard
thank you for the
Wainwright.
opportunity.
Thank you for coming, and thanks everybody for watching this episode of Veterans History Project. Until next time, I'm Bob McCormack.
That's it. That's a wrap.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dick. That was good.
You like
Geez,
that?
you saved the best story for last with the cup of coffee. Gee.
Yeah.